When you hear there's a murder, it can frighten people.
I was so shocked that something like that would happen in a lovely village like this.
They seemed to be happy with each other, everyone loved her, and she got along with everyone.
There were concerns about her welfare. The alarm bells were raised.
They had heard things happening, shouting, fights.
It was weird. It's as if he was trying to tell us something.
He went off on what can only be described as a drink and drugs binge. Ultimately, it led to the tragic death of a lovely, caring wife.
Lovely woman who was taken away from us by a horrible, sadistic man.
Situated in the stunning rolling wolds of North Lincolnshire lies the peaceful village of Worlaby.
I've lived in Worlaby for 48 years. It's a really nice, quiet village. Everybody seems to know everybody. We get on really well.
Last year, we won the Best Kept Village. It's a nice little village, plenty of activities, plenty going on.
It's so quiet, it's a little rural idyll, if you like. It's like going back in time living here. There's very little crime, it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful place to live for young families or retired people, and we've got all of them here.
Friendly community, everybody seemed like pretty much okay, you know.
There's a lot of people who help each other, so there is quite a lot of good community atmosphere.
And it is a lovely place to live. It's really nice.
So it's the ideal place for Ian Hamer and wife Joanne to set up home.
We're fairly new to the village. I think they've only been here about 5 years in total.
I think I met her once. She seemed a really nice lady.
Joanne in particular seems to throw herself into village life.
Joanne was liked by everyone on the road. Outgoing, always out on the streets, speaking to each other. Ian, you would never see. He would be in his home quite a lot. Joanne, complete opposite. Everyone loved her, a really welcoming woman, and she got along with everyone. And so people wanted to open up to her, and that's why I think she quickly integrated into Worthby and loved living there.
Joanne also has a successful career at the local council where she manages their healthy lifestyle service. After 6 years there, she's risen to become the public face of their healthy living campaigns.
She was quite a bright, some would say brilliant person who had a quite substantial job working with the local authority and really independently minded in some respects.
Just a lovely woman who did wonders for the council. Everyone loved her at the council, and no one had a bad word to say about her.
Ian Hamer, Joanne's husband of 27 years, works as a self-employed business consultant.
He worked in many businesses and earning money here and there, and to sustain a reasonable living. You know, he had a nice place in Worldby, quite an expensive area to live in, so he must have been doing okay in his profession, I guess. They seemed to be happy with each other. Friends and family said that there was a good couple for the large part. Married a long time, nice family, 3 kids. It was all seemingly going well.
But what seems like an idyllic life is about to change.
Humberside Police, what's your emergency?
Humberside Police are called after Joanne fails to turn up for work. Her elderly mother has also been trying to reach her, to no avail.
They did speak most days, if not every day, because her mother was very ill as well. And Joanne used to help to look after her. And that raised sufficient concern for her to ring the police.
There were concerns about her welfare. The alarm bells were raised.
And a concern for welfare incident was generated, which resulted in the police attending.
Police make their way over to the family home. When they knock on the door, there's no answer. So the officers break in. When they search through the house, nothing could prepare police for what they find in the master bedroom. Joanne Hamer's lying lifeless on her bed.
Medical professionals will have been called immediately. Monitors would have been placed on to see if there's any signs of heart trace or anything. Any chance whatsoever that resuscitation could take place.
They had discovered she was dead. It's apparent she'd been killed from the scene, the way she was left. And there was blood at the scene as well.
Joanne had been strangled by her dressing gown cord.
That's when we're looking at securing evidence within that scene.
Teams of police descend on Werleby. The quiet village has never seen anything like it.
When I came back from work, there was police cars, vans, and I'm saying, what's going on? What on earth are all the police doing here? Something happened. And then when I got home and my daughter texted me and said she'd seen it, that there'd been a murder. I just couldn't believe it. I was so shocked that something like that would happen in a lovely village like this. You don't expect it.
As word spreads fast through the neighbourhood, the local newspaper gets wind of an incident in Werleby. Reporter Charlie Wilson heads to the scene.
So you're like, okay, we've got a big story. Let's get there first. Let's be quick. Let's be first. So we got down there. We were the first people there. Very quickly, it was evident this could be a very serious, scary incident. I've never reported on a murder before. That's the first time that's happened to me. So it was a case of doing it really delicately, respectfully, and just trying to build up what had happened, really.
Soon, the news is spreading beyond the boundaries of the village.
Maybe an hour later, you get the likes of ITV, BBC, Sky coming down, and that's when it was like, whoa, okay, people out on the road, like, wondering what's going on. Yeah, everyone was shocked to see the amount of media attention.
You just don't get this sort of thing in these sort of villages.
Yeah, I was quite shocked, really. You would never think that something would happen in a small community like this. I couldn't believe it.
Everybody was shocked. It didn't seem right. Something like that would happen here. You hear about it in cities, but in a little quiet Lincolnshire village, you just don't expect it at all.
Joanne's family are left devastated by the news, and her colleagues at work are also reeling.
Truly sad. I spoke to a few of them. They were just in pieces. Of course they would be. Their colleague who they loved dearly, and they really did love her. It was tough for them. It was very tough.
And it dawns on Joe's village that there's a killer living in their midst.
I think some people were a little bit upset. They were locking the doors a bit more quickly.
I think the first reaction is alarm, because when you hear there's a murder but you don't know the circumstances, and it can frighten people into thinking we've got a killer at large who's going to cause more trouble. You're quite fearful about what it could mean and what the implications for the future are.
It was very awful to hear that it had happened in our village. It's frightening. It really is.
With fear spreading quickly throughout the village, Humberside Police needs to work fast to establish who committed this horrendous crime. And first, they look at Joanne's home life.
This marriage on the surface, to all intents and purposes, would have looked like a stable, normal marriage without too many problems. The reality was quite different.
What I heard was that their marriage wasn't great by the people on the road who lived there, because they had heard things happening, let's just say, whether it be shouting, fights.
It turns out Joanne and Ian had recently had a trial separation, but then Joanne decided to return to the family home.
Joanne Hamer had sought to see if she could give the relationship one last chance. This was part of her trying to make the relationship work.
This new information puts husband Ian in a new light.
Maybe Joanne tried to keep certain things to herself to hide what was really going on at the home to save her marriage.
With Ian Hamer nowhere to be seen, police suspicions are starting to build.
We do know in this particular case that a neighbour had reported an argument in the morning between them.
I spoke to the woman who heard the incident around 4 o'clock in the morning, around that time. She had heard screams, shouts for help.
And then the argument ceased.
Police launch an urgent public appeal to help them find Joanne's husband. They need to track down Ian Hamer, and fast. In the quiet Lincolnshire village of Werleby, police have launched a murder hunt. Mother of 3, Joanne Hamer, has been found strangled in her bed. Husband Ian has mysteriously disappeared since a row reported by neighbours in the early hours of the morning. And this doesn't seem to be the first either.
I guess people on the road had heard these things where it really went bad, to say the least. None of the neighbours who I spoke to liked him at all.
With Ian Hamer now under suspicion, Humberside police make an urgent appeal for his whereabouts. They release the details of his car, a white BMW 5 Series. They also warn the public not to approach him.
Once a decision had been made by the senior investigating officer that Ian Hamer was a suspect for this crime, then a manhunt would have taken place. They don't know at the moment where he is, but there would be certain fast-track actions raised to secure his arrest. You know, checks with family and friends. Where does he usually go to? Where does he work? Checks with hospitals as well. If he's got a mobile phone, has he made any calls? We may be able to cell site to where he's located and instigate an area search. He's clearly got use of a vehicle in this case. So, you know, we've been putting the vehicle details onto the automatic number plate recognition, the ANPR system. And as soon as that vehicle passes an ANPR camera, then that will send an alert to the police. All these inquiries made to trace and arrest Ian Hamer.
He plainly was the last person with her and had disappeared from the scene. So the investigation then was focusing on building that picture around what had happened between them. And then going further back, what had happened between them not just on that night, but also in the period leading up to this.
Detectives put Ian Hamer under the microscope.
The picture that emerged from witnesses was of somebody who was supremely self-assured, self-confident, and superficially was, or at least on the face of it, was somebody who was quite engaging and interesting. But those same people always spoke about, the more they got to know him, appeared to be another side to him. And they also described how, over time, he could present as being very self-interested and, I suppose, conceited. So there was somebody who could, when he wanted to present in a way which was superficially attractive, but the more people got to know him, there was to him which was unattractive in terms of him being controlling, perhaps aggressive.
And after speaking to Joanne's family and friends, it turns out Hamer has a checkered history.
There have been a number of previous reports made indicating domestic violence. You know, he was reported to have ripped up her wedding dress.
Those reports of him tearing up a teddy bear, which was sentimental to her.
You know, this is really significant in a case such as this.
The police had been called out on many occasions, but as is so often the case, they weren't really ever progressed. Part of that was because of the approach of the family to try and manage what was happening within the family. The personality of Joanne Hamer was, tragically, to try and make it work at all times.
when you're married to someone for so long, you want to, make things work. And she shouldn't be wrongly thought that for wanting to make her marriage with her husband of 27 years and 3 children work. It's just that he was so far gone and so far twisted.
There are a number of occasions where she left him, but he managed to persuade her to come back. And I've investigated, sadly, domestic homicides where controlling and abusive husbands have tried to isolate their wives, and we know that Hamer did this and, dissuading her from contact with family and friends.
In 2013, police discover this came to a head when Ian Hamer started divorce proceedings, blaming the involvement of Joanne's mother in their relationship.
So, he was antagonistic towards his wife's relationship with her own mother. So he was all about controlling and being abusive towards his wife and driving a wedge between her and family and friends. And it just shows this controlling and coercive and bullying and domineering nature of Ian Hamer towards his wife within that relationship. And that isn't uncommon in domestic homicide cases, sadly.
It seems the couple reconciled, but then in 2017, things take another turn for the worse. Ian Hamer starts accusing his wife of having affairs. Police analysis of Joanne's smartphone reveals something even more sinister. Around this time, Hamer hacked into his wife's handset so he could track her every move.
He would apparently follow her to work, follow her on nights out with friends, monitor her phone on where she was going, where she was at, wouldn't let her do certain things, apparently, wear certain things, and she was a bit closed off.
This is how obsessive he was about his wife and his jealousy and his thought processes, that he wanted to accuse her of extramarital affairs.
And a probe of the couple's bank accounts shows Ian's disturbingly tight grip over her purse strings.
He was keeping money from her, basically, sort of giving her an allowance of what to spend and what she could do. Wouldn't let her go out at certain times. All the bearings of, a toxic, horrible relationship. Obviously, she felt trapped. She felt like she needed to get out, and she tried to do that. He wouldn't let her.
In the weeks before her death, Joanne had moved out and was considering buying a property. But she was persuaded by Ian to return 2 days before her murder. It was on this day, the 4th of May, that police background checks reveal a disturbing incident. Ian Hamer had been arrested for drink driving.
As well as being controlling and abusive towards his wife, he seemed to be losing control of his own life in some respects. He was drinking more heavily. So there's a clear pattern there of his own destructive behaviour escalating within himself, and particularly abusing alcohol as part of that process.
Investigators discover it's not only drink that's fueling Hamer's abusive behaviour.
He had a cocaine problem that had become prevalent in his life over the last 2 or 3 years, and that became worse and worse and worse. When he picked up this addiction, maybe his personality changed because of that, and his health, mental and physical, deteriorated.
Businessman Ian Hamer's respectable lifestyle is now questionable. And when they learn what he did in the hours following the estimated time of Joanne's murder, they're convinced they have the right man. Soon after that last blazing row reported by neighbours, Joanne's mother said she had an unsettling phone call with her son-in-law.
When family members tried to contact her the following morning, he told them that Joanne Hamer couldn't speak to them because she was unwell, and as he framed it, she had a sore throat.
Chillingly, police believe Joanne was already dead when Hamer made that calculating comment.
Just, sick. like strangle her, and then you got to tell her mum that she can't come because she's got a bad throat. Like, sadistic, like horrible. When you hear that, it's just like, I don't know what to say. Horrible.
And it appears Hamer used the same story again.
His son had attended at the marital home at a time when Joanne Hamer was probably dead, and that's when he first introduced that concept of her having a sore throat when he knew she'd been strangled and she was probably dead.
He also told his son as well when he was at the house to go and buy some lozenges because his mother was sleeping, she had a bad throat, knowing full well that he'd strangled her, which now we know what happened, was particularly chilling in this case. To say that she got a bad throat, I mean, how callous is that?
And therefore the question is, was that him being cruel or was it him buying time?
This cunning ploy tells police they have a calculating killer on the run, who wants to stay one step ahead of them. But it's only a matter of time before a false move by Hamer would reveal where he's hiding. Worleby, North Lincolnshire. Murder suspect Ian Hamer is on the run after his wife Joanne is found strangled in their bedroom.
And this is a man who, at this point, everyone in the area is looking for and knows that, okay, this is a manhunt.
As police cast their search net wider, reporters like Charlie Wilson are on the ground looking for leads. Suddenly, that morning, there's word from nearby Barton-upon-Humber.
We heard news that there might be an incident in Barton where he might be. And so we went to Barton and then heard he was seen near a pub.
Barton is about 8 miles away and it's quite big, quite a lot of people, so it's the obvious place to go. You've got the Humber Bridge. From the Humber Bridge, you've got the whole of Yorkshire to go into and disappear. It would be a logical place to go.
A resident next to one of the town's car parks spots a man behaving erratically.
But he was basically swaying around in the car park, making noise, acting strange.
Not realising it's Humberside Police's most wanted, Ian Hamer, the woman calls 999 to report a disturbance.
I think she reported that he was on Spice and shouting. Obviously, he was actually drunk, intoxicated, or whatever he was on. He would wander around the car park, shout.
A lone patrol officer heads to the car park to move this wild drunkard on.
Police basically just found a man shouting and being strange and realised this is Ian Hamer. Arrested him straight away.
The officer single-handedly tackles Hamer to the floor, then restrains him whilst he radios for assistance.
I have to say the actions of the officer that arrested him were exemplary, real bravery shown in tackling this individual. And when he was arrested, he actually had to detain him. This is a rural force. It's not an inner city force with the same number of resources.
Meanwhile, roving reporter Charlie Wilson is close by. Suddenly, he's alerted to the breaking news.
A woman sent me a picture of a man on the floor being sat on by a police officer. Okay, that's our man. So we know exactly where it is. I'm actually at a shop getting a drink of Lucozade. Run around with my Lucozade in hand. So I arrive at the scene. Ian Hamer is being sat on by a lone police officer, waiting for his fellow officers to come. So to come round the corner and see a police officer sat on who we believe is Ian Hamer was just wild, yeah.
After struggling to contain Hamer for nearly 5 minutes alone, backup finally arrives for the officer.
They must have came, got half a second after I came round the corner, and then police swarmed on him, got him away, and sort of like ushered us away. Clearly intoxicated, drunk or drugs or both, not in his right frame of mind, in the clothes that he's wearing the night before. We get him up, handcuff him, escort him to the back of the van.
Meanwhile, news of an arrest for Joanne's murder filters back to her village of Werleby. Residents can now breathe a sigh of relief.
I was just pleased he'd been caught for the crime, but to then find out that it was her husband, it was a real shock.
Detectives start to piece together what Hamer's been up to in the last 24 hours since fleeing the murder scene.
He went off on what can only be described as a drink and drugs binge. We know that from the inquiries that were made. Laughing and joking, certainly no signs of remorse or distress.
Bar owner Pauline Dickinson had reported serving Ian Hamer. But when he arrived on her premises, she had no idea he was on the run.
He came in the pub around 5:30, never seen him before, asked for a pint of Carling. He got his pint of Carling and went and sat down out the way of everybody.
Next, Hamer returns to the bar and starts to hit the spirits. Soon the conversation heads in a strange and unsettling direction.
Put the tequila on the bar and he literally looked either side of himself, leant over the bar and said to me, "Why did the Mexican push his wife off the cliff?" So I did the same as he did, looked either side and said, "To kill her." He went, "No, you know it." I said, "Yeah, I do." He paid for his drinks, went and sat down. He came back to the bar 10-15 minutes later and stood there.
Then Pauline clocked something sinister.
He hid his arm behind, but I'd already seen that he'd got scratches. I don't know which way, it was just you could see scratches on his wrist. One of my customers noticed scratches as well and went, "Oh, he's one of those who's been harming." One of my customers said to him, "Hey up mate, what are you doing in here? Are you from here?" He says, "No," he said, "I'm not from here. I'm just going through a breakup with my wife." So he went, "Oh, right, sorry to hear that, mate." He went, "Yeah, she's taken me for all my money." So he says, "Don't be sad." He said, "Have another drink." So one of the customers bought him a drink.
Over the next few hours, Hamer knocks back the drinks, laughing and joking with the regulars.
So he did about 2 more jokes to the point where the customer said, "No wonder your wife left you. If you've got jokes like that," he went, "that's maybe why she's gone then."
Quite significantly as well, he was seen to take his wedding ring off. So he knows what's happened. He knows that his wife's dead. So, that's quite a significant gesture. And that was done, nearly hours after he'd actually killed his wife. It just shows the kind of individual that he is.
Some of the pub regulars seem unsettled by this customer they've never seen before, who has struck up conversation with another man at the bar.
My 2 regulars, they finished their drinks. I went, "Right, you 2 go in." I went, "No, we're not going." Says, "Why?" "We're not leaving you with them 2. We don't know the other guys, so we're not leaving you with them." I went, "Oh, don't be daft. What are these 2 going to do to me? I'll soon have them out the door, don't worry." So they went, "No, we're staying." So they stayed.
Soon the bar's regulars saw glimpses of another side to their joking acquaintance, who's going by a false name, Sebastian.
So we played pool against one of my regulars, who is a really good player. And during the game, there was banter going on. But right at the end, when the customer knew he was going to win, he picked up the broom that I'd got out ready to clean up and potted Black with the broom. Which Sebastian said, that is so disrespectful to do that. He said, I don't think so, I still won. I don't think he was very pleased and finished his drink, and he did actually walk out. You just get a feeling about people. You know if they're not okay. I don't think he would have done any harm, but who knows?
Next morning, Pauline's alerted to the terrifying news on Facebook that the customer she had served the night before isn't called Sebastian, but Ian Hamer. And he's wanted by police for murder.
My reaction was, oh my God. So I phoned a policeman that I know, and within 5-10 minutes, I think, they'd got him.
Soon the joke Hamer told Pauline about a man pushing his wife off a cliff takes on a sinister new meaning.
It was weird, but they were just jokes like, you know what, a kid would come home and tell you jokes, but it's not until the following day, and I actually thought to myself, it's as if he was trying to tell us something. I don't know. It's not until the following day that things fell into place.
Despite his intoxicated state, Ian Hamer engages with the police at the point of his arrest.
He says something like, it wasn't murder, it was manslaughter. Something along those lines. I heard the word manslaughter.
He did make a very significant statement, an unsolicited comment to the officer indicating that he wasn't guilty of murder. It was diminished responsibility, so he was already offering up a statutory defence to murder.
After 24 hours on the run, Ian Hamer has been arrested in North Lincolnshire on suspicion of murder. Just hours after killing his wife, Joanne, Hamer was spotted in Pauline's bar, just 7 miles away from the crime scene.
You just would not have thought he'd actually killed his wife and just come blazingly into a bar a few miles away having a drink. When you hear them things, it's like, really? Could you be so cold-blooded and heartless?
When police take him in for questioning, Hamer repeats his claims that he committed manslaughter due to mental illness. But one throwaway comment soon after his arrest suggests this is a cunning ploy to reduce any impending prison sentence.
And what was a telling piece of evidence? He said to the officers who were tending to him, this was manslaughter, and asked this question: have we done enough for diminished responsibility? This was a man who was trying to present a picture of being so mentally unwell that he was not to be held fully responsible for his wife's death.
This is clearly somebody who's a very manipulative, selfish individual. And his response, he's already trying to escape justice for his crime as soon as he's arrested, and he's clearly given a great deal of thought to that before his arrest. And Ian Hamer clearly only cares about one person, and that's Ian Hamer.
In spite of Hamer's claims, he's charged with his wife's murder. Months later, mental health experts are brought in to provide a true picture of Hamer's state of mind.
After his arrest, he was subsequently interviewed by 2 psychiatrists to explore whether there were any mental illness elements that would lead to diminished responsibility.
They ask him probing questions about his relationship with wife Joanne.
He began to present what was ultimately going to be his defence. He accepted he had killed her, but in the context where he said he didn't want to do it, and used the phrase that it was some sort of psychotic episode.
Then Hamer starts to go on the offensive, claiming he is the real victim in the abusive marriage.
Ian Hamer claimed that his wife had taunted him to say that their children weren't his. He made a slur on his wife's character, saying she was engaged in extramarital affairs. There's no evidence of this.
He would say that she would see other people, that she would be on dating apps and she would find other men more attractive than him. And anyone who knew Joanne knows that that's just completely laughable and a joke. She was the most loyal woman you could meet. Just sort of making up excuses in his head, I guess, to find ways and motives to do what he did.
Then his claims turn even more extreme.
He made plain that he was himself a victim of domestic abuse. You know, he claims that she hit him over the head with a shoe. We've got no information about any injury, or certainly any serious injury to him. He claims she threw a phone at him. Again, there was no injury that we're aware of to support that. This was all seen as a tissue of lies. And clearly the people that knew Joanne had not seen any evidence of this whatsoever. And the only person who could suggest that this had taken place was Ian Hamer himself.
But soon the psychiatrists start to uncover Hamer's true colours.
What was actually found by two psychiatrists, one diagnosed him with morbid jealousy and one with obsessive jealousy. But clearly there wasn't an element of diminished responsibility for his actions. From the facts we know about the case and his behaviour and his actions, come as no surprise, because we can see the way that he jealously controlled his wife's movements and behaviour, you know, a real controlling nature.
And when detectives scan Hamer's smartphone, the picture he painted as the victim starts to crumble. Just days before Joanne's murder, they find texts he sent to another woman promising jewellery.
Things he was doing, he would accuse her for. He was seeing other women, that came out. He was on dating apps. He would accuse her of the things that he was doing exactly the same.
We do know that Ian Hamer had affairs, he had one-night stands, and he accused his wife of the same. There's no evidence to suggest that that was the case.
But investigators are blown away when they uncover the name Hamer uses on his dating profile. It sounds strikingly familiar.
He'd use a fake name, Sebastian, apparently. He would use to women wherever he was going to maybe go out on these dates and meet people. And yeah, to use a fake name, like you're obviously up to something that's not good. "15 months after Joanne's murder, husband Ian Hamer is finally put on trial at Hull Crown Court. He pleads guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. But the prosecution sets out the case for cold-blooded murder.
So it was a consideration for the jury whether that was a man demonstrating real symptoms of mental illness, or whether it was somebody using any illness to formulate a defence.
The court is told the torrid details of the abuse Hamer inflicted on his wife.
The question that was raised with the jury is whether or not, by the time of the killing, he in effect wanted to get rid of his wife so he could move on, but he needed control of that situation, and that's how we presented the case.
As the trial progresses, even Hamer's own children take to the stand against their own father to describe the abuse suffered in their own home.
One of them spoke of being aware of that from a very young age and become increasingly toxic and abusive. You then see the horrible human side of this, because they're being required to give evidence against one of their parents, and in circumstances where they've lost the other one. And for them, there's no good outcome to any of this.
Following a heart-wrenching 3-week trial, the jury retires to consider their verdict.
The verdict of the jury was that Ian Hamer was guilty of murder. Therefore, they rejected that idea that his mental state was such that he was not able to exercise proper judgment and control.
He designed everything, including his response to the arresting officer, to make out that this was the case, that it was diminished responsibility. Thankfully, the jury didn't buy that, and they saw through Ian Hamer's excuses for what they were, just excuses.
Hamer's jailed for life with a minimum of 22 years. At the time of sentencing, the judge takes into account the years of domestic violence Joanne suffered at the hands of her husband and his abusive control over her finances.
The judge actually commented that he believed that one of the main motives in this case was he was afraid if the relationship ended that he would lose a significant amount of money. Money to which Joanne in the law of England and Wales was entitled to. Those were the family finances that should have been split accordingly. He didn't want that to happen, and he murdered his wife as a result.
Kill someone, go out drinking, using drugs, and joking about what he did. He obviously deserves to be locked away for the rest of his life, and I'm glad that's the case.
Killers like Ian Hamer are so manipulative and so self-centred, and ultimately it led to the tragic death of a lovely, caring wife. But there's only one person to blame for that, and it's Ian Hamer.
Years later, the sadness of the case is still felt by those in the quiet Lincolnshire village of Worleby.
There'll always be some weird, I guess, aura for people still living there, knowing that what happened in that house happened, the worst crime you can commit. And I guess it opened a lot of people's eyes to thinking that this can happen anywhere.
I feel so sorry for the family. You know, one act like that and it's wrecked the family. And it's something they'll have to live with, I'm afraid to say, and it's not very nice.
Ian Hamer is definitely a master manipulator. A lovely woman who was taken away from us by a horrible, sadistic man. It was something you never expected to report on, especially in Worleby. I never met Joanne, but I know she was a lovely woman. I know that, you know, she deserved a lot better than Ian Hamer. Truly sad story, a sad situation. All you can do is just hope the best for the Hamer family, of the children. Just an awful situation which Ian Hamer will spend the rest of his life in jail for.
The 999 call was made at 7:44 that evening. All that Mandy Joseph could scream down the phone at that point was, "Help, help."
There were sounds of a gunshot and a woman screaming for help, and then the line went dead.
There's been a murder. I said, well, what do you mean there's been a murder? He said, yeah, they found 2 women murdered up by the garage. It's got to be them.
It's something that is totally unbelievable to kill them both. It was just devastating, and you just could never, ever imagine something like that happening in Aldclyffe.
It was vicious in the extreme.
When officers reviewed the CCTV, they identified a vehicle that came down the pathway around the time of the murder, and these are the people responsible for the deaths.
Hartcliffe, a quintessentially English village situated in the heart of Bedfordshire, best known for being the birthplace of British explorer Arthur Henry Newman.
Pockcliffe is a smallish village in mid-Bedfordshire, straddles the A5. It's a quiet village. It's on a route between Dunstable in the south and Milton Keynes in the north.
Everyone knows everyone, really, so it's quite a nice little place to live and to stay and to be, really.
It's a lovely local community with a pub and a lovely little school. There's not a lot of trouble. It's a good little village.
I'd say the community is quite close-knit. A lot of people know a lot of other people, so everyone kind of knows everybody.
And central to the community and village life was Iris Jones and her husband.
Iris was a much-loved figure in the village, well known in the village. She'd lived here for years and years. She was known especially for the fact that she had fostered something like 120 children, she and her husband, over a sort of 30-year period, starting in the 50s and going through to the mid-1980s.
She was a woman who had fostered over 100 children. The local community held her in the highest regard.
She literally was an angel walking amongst us.
Auntie was, once you got to know her, she had a heart of gold. And she'd do anything for anybody.
She was much loved, a caring, compassionate person who opened up her home to countless children, less fortunate.
I mean, it became a way of life to her, fostering several children there who we actually grew up with. And as I say, she was, that was her life, kids, really.
Iris's husband died in 1993, leaving Iris a widower. She remained close to her children, including her foster daughter, Mandy, whom she relied on.
Mandy Jones was fostered by Iris when she was about 4 years old. She's had a proper mother-daughter relationship throughout her whole life. Mandy was 34 years old. She was a carer herself. She worked in the care industry. Her whole life was about caring for others.
And when Iris's husband died, she moved back in with her foster mother to care for her in her declining health.
She was a caring girl. There was nothing she wouldn't do for you.
Iris walked with the aid of a frame and walking stick. She had heart problems, she had diabetes, and she had failing eyesight. In later years, as Iris's health declined, Mandy took a much more active role in the care of her foster mother, looking after her, caring for, making sure she had everything she needed.
Please, so can I help?
The 999 call was made at 7:44 that evening, and it was made by Mandy Joseph. All that Mandy Joseph could scream down the phone at that point was, "Help, help."
Then the line went dead. If a 999 call is cut off or goes dead for whatever reason, the operator will review what they've already heard. In this case, there was a woman screaming for help, so they would then dispatch units to the house.
Mandy's screams were not the only disturbing sound the police operator heard.
There were sounds of a gunshot, a woman screaming for help, and the control room inspector would then decide on the appropriate level of response because of the high level of risk to both the officers attending and the public. It's a proportionate response to dispatch a firearms team. In this case, it was always going to be a firearms team.
The call handlers did try to call back and there was no response, but the police were able to trace where the call had been made from. And that resulted in police being sent to the property, including armed police officers, who forcefully gained entry into the house that evening. The house where the shooting had taken place was up a gravel drive and situated behind a garage forecourt.
There's a petrol station, and by the side of it there was a track that led down to this detached house.
Upon arrival, the armed officers were met with a gruesome sight.
They found Iris, she was lying by the sink. A further search of the house located Mandy in the lounge.
The women had been shot. Iris had been shot twice. Mandy had been shot 4 times. Shotgun cartridges were found at the house. So it was clear to the police officers that it was a shotgun killing of both women.
Immediately, police get to work preserving the scene.
Once the scene's been cordoned off, we'll be thinking about fast-track actions. What is it that we can do now to move the investigation on? The house was set back from the road, so was there any CCTV that could be reviewed straight away? What we want to do is try and identify the offenders as soon as possible.
We were sitting here watching telly, and all we could hear was sirens and a lot of commotion. And I went out and I could see the helicopter flying over Auntie's house. And I come in and I said, "There's something up," to the wife. And at the time we had a phone, and I rang up my father and I said, "There's something going on up Auntie's house." And then my father rang me and said, "There's been a murder." And I said, "Well, what do you mean there's been a murder?" He said, "Yeah, they found 2 women murdered up by the garage." And then the bell began to sink in, and I can remember my father saying to me then, "It's got to be them." And that was a shock and a half when we knew it was both of them.
Quick assessments of the house revealed that there was no one else on the scene. However, it appeared that some items had gone missing.
A DVD was taken. The women's handbags were taken.
The motive looked like it was burglary.
Was this a burglary gone wrong?
It was just devastating, absolutely devastating. And you just could never, ever imagine something like that happening in Hockliffe.
I think everyone talks to everybody, and it would be a very short period of time until everyone knew the situation.
I mean, this is a quiet area. People will tell you that. It was quiet then, it's quiet now. To get a double shooting, 2 people dead in the village, truly exceptional.
And the question on everybody's lips was, who had committed such a heinous murder?
In a little village, or little villages, things spread quite quick. And people were all concerned because things like that don't happen. It's a nightmare.
This was a shocking crime for the village of Hockliffe. Somebody using that amount of force on 2 helpless women has only one intention, and that is to kill them.
In the quiet Bedfordshire village of Hockliffe, news has spread of the brutal murder of Iris Jones and her foster daughter, Mandy Joseph.
This is the house where Iris Jones and her late husband Clifford cared for 120 foster children. But this kindness was to prove her downfall.
the local community, and it was a quiet little area, were obviously shocked by the whole incident and very sad at the loss of two well-respected members of the community.
Everyone knew about it. It was the talk of the village. As I moved along the high street, talking to people, everyone was aware of what had happened.
Lots of people knew Iris Jones, knew Mandy, and they were just stunned that two pillars of the community, two kind, caring people, should have had their lives ended in such a way.
To me, as silly as it sounds, it's a bit like when Lady Di died, all went quiet, you know, and I think that's how it was. There was so many police around and all that lot, but it shocked everyone, really shocked the villages, not just Ockcliffe.
With fear spreading through the community, police need to quickly establish the circumstances around the murders.
Once the scene's been cordoned off, the police will look for any fast-track actions, so anything that can lead them to the identity of suspects or the offenders. And that will include any passive data like CCTV, ANPR, any phone work that can be done. But it will also include speaking to witnesses, the suspects, but also what we call victimology. If you find out how a person lived, you may find out how they died.
Post-mortem results reveal that Iris was shot twice and Mandy 4 times using a shotgun.
This is a very brutal murder. The way both Iris and Mandy have been gunned down with a shotgun, it's absolutely, it's top scale brutal.
It was vicious in the extreme. Mandy had been shot in the chest and also in the hand, which shattered the mobile phone she was holding to make the 999 call. So that's why it abruptly ended.
Upon realising what was happening, she ran to the phone, dialed 999 and was screaming for help, but the phone was shot out of her hand, and this was confirmed by the pathologist during their post-mortem.
With the emergency call cutting out when Mandy was shot, police confirm the time of death as 7:45 p.m. so can start to piece together Iris and Mandy's last known movements.
The police have been out talking to residents in the area, doing house-to-house inquiries. And of course, they'd also made inquiries with the garage forecourt, where there was a shop, and they spoke to the staff there. Mandy had finished her shift at the care home in Luton, where she worked, and had arrived home. But first, she called at the garage forecourt and went into the shop to buy some items, firelighters, because I think the plan was to have a log fire that evening. So she brought firelighters, she brought some cigarettes, said hello to the staff before going back up to the house.
And inquiries at the garage give police their first breakthrough.
That garage forecourt was subject to CCTV, which was handed over to the police.
The thing with this investigation is we can time the 999 call. So one of the fast-track actions would be to review any CCTV in the area around that time. And an obvious one was the garage forecourt, because you had to drive past that or through it to get to Iris's house. When officers reviewed the CCTV, they identified a vehicle that came down the pathway and back out onto the A6 around the time of the murder.
And one sees this people carrier moving in the distance, moving past the garage along the track.
And it was at a time which was about 10 minutes after a 999 call had been made from the house.
And that's what led the police to go to find and identify who was driving the vehicle and so on.
Once we have the registration number of the vehicle, it was flagged on the police national computer to be stopped and checked and reported back to Bedfordshire, because they may be witnesses to the offence, they also may be the offenders. So it's imperative that we find them as soon as possible, because we can put them in the area of the murder at the time it happened.
A day after the murder, and police track down the car in Suffolk. Inside is a couple. But that's not all.
When they searched the vehicle, they found a shotgun in the back. Once the police find a shotgun in the rear of the vehicle, then they were arrested on suspicion of murder straight away, because we've got 2 victims with shotgun wounds. So you've got your suspicion straight away.
The police told us on that Monday they had arrested the couple along with a 14-year-old boy.
Police named the couple arrested as 36-year-old Anita Mansfield and her husband, 46-year-old Michael Milcroft, as well as an unnamed teenager.
Where a shotgun has been used or a firearm has been used, it's vital that we identify everybody who may have been responsible or may have come into contact with the weapon. So in this case, the police forensically examined the 14-year-old boy, and that examination revealed he had gunshot residue on him.
He is showered with gunshot debris. So he was at the scene of the crime. So that's where the police start accusing him being part of the murder.
Once suspects are arrested in a case, that's just the start of the work for the police. There's a huge amount of forensic work that has to be done. We have to carry out searches at their home address or home addresses, and we have to speak to witnesses or people that knew them and dig into their background as well to see if there's any motive that we can identify.
Police start by looking into the backgrounds of Anita Mansfield and Michael Milcroft to see how they could be linked to Mandy and Iris.
Anita Mansfield was someone Michael Milcroft met in the 1980s. He met her in a pub in Dunstable. They quickly formed a relationship.
He then married Anita Mansfield and they had a family together.
We do know that he may have worked as a potman helper in a local pub in Leighton Buzzard at one stage, but to all intents and purposes he was unemployed. He was a carer for Anita. She didn't work. She had health issues to the extent that she told people she couldn't work. A lot of people, a lot of her neighbours thought this was a bit of a sham and that she was using her poor health as a meal ticket, was the way it was described.
She was claiming benefits, but always had delusions of grandeur. She craved a more affluent lifestyle.
Information found at the couple's home at the time of the arrest reveals they were on the verge of moving.
Milcroft and Mansfield had set their hearts on buying a large country house in Suffolk. Really, they wanted to put their lives on a sound financial footing. They'd lived a nomadic life of living a very much a hand-to-mouth existence. They wanted to buy a big house for the family.
They'd found a house to move to, the dream home, which I think was one of the most expensive properties in the area. And they wanted to go to that home with its swimming pool and so on.
And so the house near Beccles, that became the house of their dreams, and it was on the market, I think, for £740,000. The purchase should have gone through in the December of 2004, but again, Milcroft and Mansfield weren't ready. They hadn't got the funds, and so a new date was arrived at, which was February 28.
Millcroft and Mansfield were pulling the wool over the sellers' eyes in relation to the funding for buying their house.
With the couple living on state benefits and with no savings, police are perplexed as to how they can afford such an expensive new home. But it's not long before officers discover something of interest.
They were renting a property, and searches of that property found documents belonging to Mandy Joseph in the house itself.
The documents are revealed to be life insurance policies taken out by Mandy Joseph 18 months earlier.
She took out two with different companies. One was Norwich Union and one was Zurich Insurance.
Further investigations reveal that in the event of Mandy's death, her beneficiary named in the policies would receive a staggering £800,000. And this beneficiary was named as Anita Oakfield Bennett, also known as Anita Mansfield. Suddenly, police believe they have a motive for murder.
For the insurance companies to pay out, Mandy Joseph had to die.
Police investigating the murders of Mandy Joseph and Iris Jones have arrested a couple, Anita Mansfield and Michael Millcroft, alongside a 14-year-old boy. A search of the couple's home uncovers life insurance documents in the name of Mandy Joseph, which would pay out £800,000 to Anita Mansfield if she died.
Their plan was to get their hands on around £800,000. And unknown to Mandy, Anita Mansfield had taken out life insurance on her life, so that in the event of Mandy's death, the money from two life insurance policies would come to Mansfield and Millcroft.
You can't just go out and take an insurance policy on somebody. There has to be a lot of deception involved, and in this case they deceived both Mandy and the insurance company.
The couple were extremely cunning all the way through. They built up a picture of Mandy's medical history. They had documents belonging to Mandy they shouldn't have had. They had a mobile phone of Mandy's that was taken from the house. Again, these were all things that could provide them with details of Mandy that would help them in the plan to set up these bogus insurance policies.
Police now believe Anita and Michael fraudulently set up the insurance policies to help fund a new lifestyle.
The plan was to buy this large mansion with the proceeds of that insurance policy.
There were policies apparently taken out on the life of Mandy, and they would have provided the husband and wife defendants with a beautiful home with a swimming pool and all sorts of other good qualities.
To get the money, Mandy Joseph had to die, and that meant they had to kill her.
But the question still remains. How are Anita and Michael connected to their victims, Mandy and Iris?
Michael Millcroft was the foster son of Iris Jones. He had gone to live with Iris and her family in 1959 when he was just 10 days old. And Iris gave a stable home full of love and warmth to lots and lots of children, and Michael Millcroft was one of them. So at the age of 10 days old, he was living with Iris and brought up by Iris and her late husband, and became part of the family.
So for his whole life, Iris was his mother.
I remember Michael, he'd be a bit younger than me. He used to play with us as kids. He was part of our family.
It was said that Michael regarded Mandy as his younger sister. She looked on him as an older brother. They were brought up together as children. They sat round the dinner table, went on holidays together.
At one stage, Michael's girlfriend, Anita, even moved into the home with him. But in 1989, it seems there was a divide in the family.
Iris and Mandy, Michael and Anita had all gone on holiday to Mallorca. There was a big row while on holiday, with the result that when everyone returned, Michael and Anita Mansfield moved out. And that really marked the 12-year gap in things, because he stayed away from Iris and Mandy for all that time and didn't come back into their lives until around 2000. When Michael came back, he changed his name. He was always known as Michael Jones. He'd taken Iris's name. But he was now calling himself Michael Millcroft. And he was married to Anita. They'd started a family. And he was unemployed.
It's believed that this is the point in which the couple devised their devious plan.
For that to happen by a foster brother is just... You wouldn't put that, would you? It's something that is totally unbelievable to think that money corrupts everything. To kill them both, nightmare. Nightmare.
You know, we kept thinking to ourselves, no, it can't be Michael what's done it.
With news sinking in that Iris's own foster son could be behind her murder, forensic evidence comes in.
We have the forensic evidence, DNA on the triggers of the shotgun, victim's blood on the shotgun, as well as Mansfield's DNA. These are the people responsible for the deaths.
Police present all their evidence against Anita Mansfield, Michael Millcroft and the teenager to the Crown Prosecution Service.
And they decided to charge them with murder.
There were murder counts and also counts of attempting to obtain money by deception.
With the three pleading not guilty to murder, preparation begins to build a case for trial. Starting with trying to prove that the couple had taken out the fraudulent insurance policy.
Anita did much of the setting up over the phone. She would ring an insurance company, pretended to be Mandy Joseph, and proceeded to give Mandy's medical history, saying what she smoked in a week, what alcohol intake, a general medical history, that sort of thing. These were all details that she had somehow gleaned over the last few years in the build-up to the killings, and it helped her in the pretense that she was Mandy Joseph on the phone.
With the policy set up, there was only one thing left to do.
Mandy's death was essential for the claim to be made on insurance. It was a racing certainty that Iris would be in the cottage because at that time she was housebound. So they both had to be killed if they were going to succeed in getting the insurance money.
It's hard to believe that anybody thought they could get away with it. I mean, to us, you've got to be a little bit sick in the head to think that you can get away with something like that to start off with.
With the trial looming, defence barristers are appointed for the three defendants.
I've done many murder trials, either prosecuting or defending. The first I knew about this case was I was instructed in the autumn of 2005, and because the police and the CPS had chosen to charge the boy with being a murderer, he went into custody. So he's remanded in custody, and he goes to a small specialist unit where I visited him.
But there was one piece of information which hadn't yet been revealed about the 14-year-old boy.
He was their son. And I think potentially the most evil part of the case was that the parents thought they could blame their son and get away with it.
In Bedfordshire, Michael Millcroft, Anita Mansfield and their own son have pleaded not guilty to the murder of Iris Jones and her foster daughter, Mandy Joseph. The trial begins at Luton Crown Court.
The defendants in the case were a mother who complained of ill health, a father who was a rather pathetic sort of individual, and their 14-year-old son who left the premises covered in gunpowder.
What was revealed in court was the lengths that they went to plan this murder.
The court hears exactly what unfolded on that fateful day.
It was just an ordinary day. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was known that Millcroft and Mansfield were coming to the house that evening, and that's one of the reasons that she called into the shop, because the plan was to have a log fire burning for them when they arrived to make it homely and welcoming. And so Mandy had called into the shop to buy firelighters and to help get the fire going. Iris, he was waiting for him in the kitchen, having made a cup of tea and got a log fire roaring.
The first shot would have been delivered to the foster mother. She goes down on the ground in the kitchen. Mandy came into the kitchen, having heard the shot, and received the second barrel. She staggered out of the kitchen, and the son was able to describe to me that his father, having fumbled with the shotgun, reloaded it, went out into the hallway and shot Mandy a second time.
At one point, Mandy Joseph had been on her knees, having received a shotgun blast, but she was still on her knees when she was shot again.
Mandy still wasn't dead, so he fired bullets, shotgun into her again a couple of times, and then returned to the kitchen where his foster mother was still breathing. So she heard the killing, and he fired at her, finally killing her, and then left the premises.
In those last seconds of their lives, for Mandy and Iris, it must have been truly terrifying.
In the execution of their crime, the couple went to great lengths to make sure their plan didn't fail.
They even planned to alter the shot in the shotgun cartridge. Normally a shotgun cartridge will fire small ball bearings and they will spread out into a certain pattern. In this case they used harder and larger ball bearings, absolutely lethal and illegal to change the shot as well.
The jury also hears how the couple went even further to try to distance themselves from the crime by blaming their son.
Here were two defendants saying that it was the third defendant that did it. They were totally innocent. If there was any dishonesty shown by them when they were first seen by the police, it was because they wanted to protect the boy. That was their story. His story, of course, was that he simply wasn't involved. I think potentially the most evil part of the case was that the parents thought they could blame their son and get away with it. I relied upon the 14-year-old boy, he was then 15 when I represented him, relied on his recollection. He was the only witness to the killing, and his recollection was clear, and it seemed to fit in with other evidence.
The young boy was able to tell the police that he was aware that Millcroft and Mansfield had been planning the deaths of the women for some time, and that various ways of killing them had been discussed and thought about.
They sent the 14-year-old son to the library to research on poisoning.
He did what he was told. He went and looked in the library and read about one or two things and reported back on it.
Researching not just an insurance scam followed by a shooting, but other methods that how Mandy should be killed, including looking into poisoning her, looking into electrocuting her, looking into masonry, heavy masonry falling onto her, or that she would be the victim of a mugging gone wrong.
But it was clear from the evidence that was presented that they've manipulated him as he was growing up.
Anita's defence mirrored that of her husband. Both claimed they heard the firearm discharged, and the father left the vehicle and went in and found this dreadful scene. She claimed to have remained in the vehicle outside the cottage. Her husband went in and then left a few minutes later together with the boy.
The thing I remember most about this investigation was the sheer callousness and brutality of the murder. The callousness to take out life insurance policies because they wanted a house, and the brutality to murder two innocent women so that you can buy that house. It's evil.
After weeks of hearing evidence, the jury retires to consider their verdict.
The 14-year-old boy was found not guilty in this case.
He wasn't wicked, and he wasn't a killer. And that's what the jury must have been satisfied by at the end of their deliberations, that he had not been proved to be any part of the murder.
Then the jury delivers its verdict against Anita Mansfield and Michael Millcroft.
The evidence in this case was overwhelming. We have the forensic evidence. There's Millcroft's fingerprints on the trigger of the shotgun, as well as Mansfield's DNA. The 14-year-old boy had shotgun residue on his person. We've also got the CCTV from the time of the murder, and we've also got the shotgun found in the back of Millcroft's car. Adding to that, the documentation belonging to Mandy Joseph found at the rented property in Suffolk, as well as all the financial documents which identified fraudulent life insurance policies. So, yeah, pretty damning.
And it appears the jury agreed. Both were found guilty of murder.
Anita Mansfield received a sentence of 30 years, and Michael Millcroft received a sentence of 25 years. Mansfield got the longer sentence because the judge found that she had been the prime mover in what happened, in putting together the plan. She had been the cold, calculated director of operations. Millcroft had very much been a passenger in what happened.
And the reality was that this was a vicious, mean, wicked killing. And I seem to remember an observation by the judge that they had shown no remorse at any time, and that was clearly the case.
The judge said this was, it was no sudden spur-of-the-moment killing.
They never once apologised for what had happened. They showed no remorse.
And the case has left its mark.
When you leave the court afterwards, you never forget the tragedy of the death of the two women.
I think the saddest thing about this crime is how little Millcroft and Mansfield valued the lives of their family.
Why they done it? I know why they done it. They done it for money, but why anyone would think they could get away with it, it's quite unbelievable, really.
I've been a policeman now for nearly 29 years, and I've dealt with some very nasty people, but I've never come across any people quite so evil.
Following the sentencing of Millcroft and Mansfield, Iris's natural son, Brian, revealed how his mum would have been looking forward to her foster son's visit on that fateful day.
First thing she'd do would be at the kitchen sink to make a cup of tea. And that's how she would have greeted them. "Hello, love, do you want a cup of tea?" And then they shot her.
I mean, Mandy would still be here now, and even today, there's not many days something triggers your mind and you think of Mandy and my Auntie Iris. That's all I can really say.
The death of Iris and Mandy, these were women that had given their lives to helping and caring for other people. Iris especially, she had taken Michael into her arms when he was just 10 days old. Truly, truly shocking and really, really upsetting.